You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the fourth Doctor story, The Robots of Death. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Sticha. Hey, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Folks, be sure to follow The Secrets of Doctor Who in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, your favorite podcast app, or watch us on the StarQuest YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, where you should make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to get notifications. And I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest network you're sure to enjoy called The Secrets of Technology. You can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/technology. Now, I want to eagle-eyed Doctor Who fans, Secrets of Doctor Who fans, will note that we're doing Robots of Death out of order because we've already done the one that follows, Talons of Wang Chiang. And that's entirely my fault. I didn't know how I did it, but I got them reversed in the recording order, but that's okay.
Oh, no, Dom, you're supposed to say, see, now they were aired in the order that... order, but really Robots of Death was produced after, and we're following production order. Oh wait, that's right. A Star Trek excuse.
Yeah. It's all timey-wimey. So we're talking about Robots of Death, and that means, Jimmy, can you give us a recap?
This week, the Fourth Doctor and Leela arrive on a sand miner in the far future. A sand miner is a large mobile mining facility that crawls over a desert extracting ore. This sand miner is crewed by both humans and by robots. The robots are programmed to obey Asimov's first law of robotics, so they can't kill humans. Except they are. But the human crew members blindly ignore this possibility. At first, the humans on the ship bicker amongst themselves about which crew member is the murderer. Then they blame the Doctor and Leela when they show up. But as more humans get killed, they stop bickering and start becoming reasonable, which makes this series more enjoyable. So, the moral of the story is, the more humans die, the more enjoyable the show becomes. Gotcha. It turns out that one of the crew members, Dask, has secretly been replaced by a mad scientist named Terran Capel. Terran Capel is a roboticist who was raised by robots, thinks of himself as a robot, and is now reprogramming the robots to start a rebellion. So he gives the robots that classic robot order, kill all humans. There's also one good robot on board the ship that's an undercover cop. The humans and the undercover cop robot team up against the mad scientist and the other robots. In the process of defeating him, the Doctor has Leela release helium gas, which changes the mad scientist's voice so the robots can't identify his voice and don't recognize his commands anymore, and he gets strangled to death by one of his own creations, the fate of all good mad scientists. The end.
You know, I'd say that the whole changing the voice to with helium is unrealistic because, of course a robot would be able to detect, but I have a HomePod here next to me that never can tell who I am. Who is speaking? I'm the only person that ever talks to you. Who could possibly be speaking? So it's totally believable. Totally believable. Father Cory, what's your overall impression of this story?
This is one that as a kid always creeped me out. Those robots were just so creepy looking, and of course they had the nice voice, and oh, we're so nice, we're gonna kill all humans, isn't that wonderful? It's actually a pretty good story. I mean, there is obviously the running around corridors and all that stuff, which is a classic Who complaint, but it's a pretty good story, and it does kind of talk, show a little bit of the ethics of AI and the ethic, and what are the consequences of artificial intelligence and robotics and things like that. It doesn't mention Asimov's law, but it specifically that it's Asimov's law, but it does mention it that robots are programmed. First law programmed into them is that they can't kill, and so that's kind of a nice touch because this is probably about the time that people are starting to really recognize that contribution of Isaac Asimov was about this time. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot.
How about you, Jimmy?
Well, I was at first, when you said Robots of Death, my first thought was, oh no, and I was confusing it with the Android Invasion, which is a Fourth Doctor story with Sarah Jane with androids, and it's often regarded as terrible. This was not terrible. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad, and it was basically enjoyable.
Okay. I liked it my first time seeing it, and I thought it had good pacing. I liked the Agatha Christie style dead bodies keep falling everywhere, and you start whittling down the pool of potential suspects by death, basically. And I thought the Doctor was very quippy, and I liked Leela in this. I thought she had some good moments in it. And overall, really good. And Jimmy, I see what you were saying about the whole like the bickering. There's a certain style to these. It's almost like the modern version is Knives Out, right? That movie that was recently Rian Johnson.
Only Knives Out is good.
Yeah.
But it's this like somebody's dying, but everybody left is bickering about it, and they just and like they're bickering. It's almost like there's the trope is that bickering and fighting, in the face of survival, the need to survive is dumb and, bad for you and will get you killed, I guess, or something along those lines.
No, I think the trope is we need to generate drama while we're building the world in which the story occurs. And so we'll fill that with pointless bickering to generate artificial drama.
Okay.
And it's exhibition dump in multiple persons is what it ends up being.
Yeah.
Does Agatha Christie like that? I mean, she's widely regarded as a master of this sort of storytelling.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Agatha Christie fan. I've seen this story compared to, I forget what they're calling it now. It's one of her most famous stories. It's sometimes called 10 Little Indians. It's sometimes called And Then There Were None. I think that's what they've gone with these days. The original title was like 10 Little Indians, only it wasn't Indians. And the conceit of that story is just for once everybody dies, and everybody does die, including the killer. And,
that's funny.
But they do reveal who the killer is by the end, and then the killer kills the killer, just for completeness sake. And I find a lot of Agatha Christie very contrived.
Okay. This one, I mean, as contrived as it was, I kind of enjoyed the interplay. At least they built up some of the secondary characters. In fact, there was an extended scene of these guest characters before we ever saw the Doctor and Leela.
Yeah, and I want to point out, so in that scene, they're like hanging out in this lounge on the sand miner, and some of them are playing chess with this Onyx Chess Set, and I have that Onyx Chess Set.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
It actually, so theirs is kind of like white versus off-white. My Onyx Chess Set, which my dad bought in Mexico, is white versus blue, but it's like I have that exact. Those are the same design for the pieces and everything.
I wonder if somebody went to Mexico on vacation and brought that back as a prop.
That's what I'm guessing. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's really cool. The Father Cory, you mentioned how creepy the robots are, and they are effectively creepy in that Uncanny Valley sense, where they kind of reminded me a little bit of the Clockwork robots of the 10th Doctor, the girl in the fireplace, from
David
Tennant, Stephen Moffat.
But it was like France. It was Marie Antoinette, that whole thing.
Madame de Pompadour.
Right, exactly. Sorry, that's what I was reaching for. And so it was, they had this very stylized look to them, even right down to like a hairdo that was going on. And yeah, it was effectively creepy. In fact, several times in the episode, they bring up the whole concept of the Uncanny Valley without calling it that, I don't think. I don't think anyone ever has said it.
It didn't have the name when they made this serial, but they do talk about the Uncanny Valley effects. For people who may not be aware, the Uncanny Valley is a phenomenon in human psychology where as something looks a little human but not very human, it can be cute, like an anime animal with big eyes and stuff. And then as it gets closer and closer to human, it looks more attractive. But then when it gets too close to human, its attractiveness plummets. and that's the Uncanny Valley, because now it's perceived as a threat. It's almost human, but there's something wrong here.
Yeah.
And they talk about this in terms of how robots give off no body language signals, and so it's kind of like being surrounded by robots is being surrounded by walking, talking dead men.
Mm.
And so then that leads to robophobia, which is they define on screen as the irrational fear of robots. But it is, creepy when you have like there's one character named Toos. She's the second in command on this sand miner, and a robot is coming to. We're seeing this from the robot's perspective, so we're seeing his hands come out and strangle her, and she's begging for her life, and the robot is just calmly going, "Kill, kill." Kill.
Yeah.
I have to say, there's a number of these times where the robots go to kill somebody, and it's like, you could run.
Yeah.
You could move out of range of the hands.
Well,
they're paralyzed with fear.
We don't see it on screen, but they do say that they run faster and they don't tire.
Yeah, I get that, but she's at one point she's just kind of laying there, like kind of exposing her neck, waiting for the actress kind of messed up, I guess, and she just like laid there waiting and lifted her chin just to give him access to her neck, or you could run, but I don't know that I would, even knowing that they could catch me, I'm not sure I would lay there and die.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting thing is that scene, that beginning scene, there's this whole discussion of how, like, someone's getting a massage from one of the robots, and is it Poole who's mentioning? No, it's the first guy that died, Chubb, who mentions how he heard a story about somebody who was getting a massage, and the robot, like, tore his arm off in the doing, and like that's impossible. It was a whole foreshadowing, like it's impossible for the robots to hurt. And as soon as he said that, I said, "Oh, robots gonna start killing people in this one."
Yeah. Yep. Well, also robots of death in the title credits would kind of give you that impression too.
There's that too. Yeah. I guess so. I do like the fact that. I mean, maybe it's just me. I'm usually pretty good at picking out who the bad guy is early on, and in this one, they kept that suspense going for a while until they whittled the number of suspects down a bit. It was still up in the air to me who it could be that was behind it all. So that was good.
They did a fairly good job of misdirection in this, trying to make you think that the captain of the ship is going to be the bad guy, and he's not. His name is Uvanov. And he once they realize the robots are doing all this, he instantly becomes totally reasonable, and he and Toos are on the same side now. We're going to fight those evil robots.
Yep.
Right. And they don't overdo, like, so a lot of times they overdo the misdirection, like, oh, don't you think it's this guy? It's like, well, since you want me to believe that so much, probably not. But no, they don't overdo it. That was good.
They kind of take a nod that way, where, well, you're the one who found the body. I heard him scream from like 2 corridors down. Of course I found the body. I went looking for it,
Right. It was a bit frustrating how long it took for them to get over this idea that the robots couldn't possibly be doing this, because the idea that's of someone, like they say early on, oh, you couldn't possibly reprogram them to kill because there's so many layers of safety measures, except,
And we see later on, towards when they show it, he's not reprogramming them. He's literally just burning that part of the programming out of the robot's mind, basically.
Right, exactly. Which seems to be a little security flaw. Maybe don't make it easy.
Inputting some malware,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, maybe if you burn out the security part, it also burns out their motor control and they just shut down.
Yes, that should be a failsafe. Yeah, that would be the way to design it. I do like. So this is this the second Leela adventure? Right. This is only her second. Before this was, so she's still getting used to things, and this is where we get the Doctor explaining how the TARDIS is bigger on the inside.
Yeah, one of the few explanations in Classic Who of how that works, and they actually explain it pretty well. The Doctor has 2 boxes, one of which is clearly larger than the other. And he puts the large box down on the TARDIS console table and then brings the smaller box up close to Leela and says, now which one looks bigger? And she says, well, the one over on the console is clearly bigger, but in reality, but this one looks bigger. And he says, right. The trick is you just take the one in the distance and shove it inside the near one now.
Yes, and she says, that's silly.
Yeah.
Which it is.
I always love that first scene where you see her, she's working at this yo-yo. She's trying to really focus on it, and she thinks it's required to run the TARDIS. Yeah. That you run the yo-yo. It's part of the magic.
Right. Yeah. He told her, just keep it going up and down, but he didn't tell her why, that it was a toy. He just told her, here's a yo-yo, keep it going up and down. And so she's intent. Like, when can I stop doing it, doctor? Which was very cute and very funny. It's like with a kid, I think. So one of the aspects of the of what the deaths is the robots are putting corpse markers on their victims, which is a robot deactivation disc.
It's a disc that certifies a robot has been deactivated.
Right.
And why they're putting them on people,
it's never
explained really. Yeah.
And they, what I kind of chuckled because they look like the reflectors you see like people put on their mailboxes out in the rural areas. I think that's all they were. I think that's literally all they were.
I put that on so the plow doesn't take up my mailbox.
Yeah. to me, they look like bicycle reflectors, like you'd put on the wheel of a bicycle.
Yeah, that's exactly what that is. Yeah, I did like the whole world building they had here. This idea of this came out in, I think it was 1977, which is right around the time of Star Wars. But I think before Star Wars. I think it was earlier in the year, but it's like a Jawa sandcrawler in a sense. I kind of got that vibe from it, and I like the idea like you have a world full of sand, and you're going to mine the minerals that are in the sand with these very big. If you do it on the right scale, it'll be worthwhile. And you have these different classes of humans, but they're all working together, and I thought it was an interesting premise, idea.
They also have 1,000-mile-an-hour sandstorms on this planet, which they explain is actually good for the mining because it stirs up the ores in the sand, making them more accessible. So the heavier, valuable ores don't just sink to the bottom and stay there.
Right. And that's the source of one of our cliffhangers at the beginning of the first episode, because the Doctor and Leela the TARDIS has materialized inside the scoop, so that they're standing there and the scoop is open and they see the storm coming at them. The louvers, like they have these louvers open, and then the TARDIS has been taken away because it was blocking the scoop. And so are they going to be torn to shreds by the 1,000-mile-an-hour sandstorm? Of course not, but we get that cliffhanger.
I did have to laugh when I saw the claw coming down. All I could think of was Toy Story.
Yeah.
The claw.
The claw. The claw will save us. Yes, that was funny.
I liked how they establish a fairly complex society where, with the humans as well as the technology, where these people all largely seem to be upper class, and there are certain very powerful, very influential families, and then there are like nouveau riche that resent them. And like the captain is from one of the nouveau riche families, and he's trying to make a huge amount of money, so they'll have the fancy families will have to treat him as an equal. And some of his subordinates are from these patrician families, but they're apparently like, and this has happened in human history, just because you come from a fancy pedigree doesn't mean you got a lot of money right now.
Yep.
And you may have to go to work on a sand miner to get your family fortune up.
Yep. Right. Yeah, Zelda.
Zelda's like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Where's Link? But
also, they have, or Zilda is her name. Yeah,
Zilda. Yeah.
They also did something that, until they explicitly say human a bunch in the script, because that's what the robots are being told to destroy. So they establish very clearly these are humans. But at first, I wasn't sure of that, because they have this interesting makeup job. And they also have these interesting, some of them have interesting hats. But all of the humans have this kind of mascara that goes not around. I guess you normally put mascara just on your eyelashes. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
But instead, they've got it up over their eyebrows, and it makes kind of like a domino mask around their eyes, and then it goes down their nose and connects on their nose. So it's this interesting looking makeup thing that I thought might signal they were aliens, but nope, they're humans. So that's just a cultural affectation of the future.
Yeah. Chubb and Zilda were from the upper class, and Dask, who is actually Taron Capel, later on he ends up putting on makeup that makes him look like the robots. He's at this clear, like he wants to be. He thinks of himself as a robot. So it's interesting. The robots come in basically two types. Is
three.
Well, there's the light green Vox, the darker, almost blackish.
They are black.
Is it black? Okay, the black. The old.
So here
tape is hard to say.
At the top, you've got the Super Vox.
Yep.
And he has a voice. That's why it's Vox.
Mm-hmm.
And he's intelligent. That's why it's Super. And he's silver. And then in the middle, you have the Vox robots. They have voices. They can talk. They're just not super. And they're green. Mm-hmm. And then at the bottom, you have the dumbs. Dumb meaning mute. They do not have a voice. And they're wearing blackface. These are robots in blackface. How racist can you get?
They're the laborers. They're the dumb servants. And although our undercover robot cop, which should have been the title of the story.
That would be much better.
He's actually I really like this character. I mean, he needs some help along the way, and he's partnered with a human, Pole, who's there as an undercover cop.
Until, as Leela says his mind is broken. He eventually freaks out and is useless for the rest of the story.
I know, he kind of disappears, but I do like having the D84. I think is or D. Yeah, D84.
It is. It's D84, and he's a really great character. He appears to be a dumb, but he's actually like a super Vox. He's intelligent and has a voice and is capable of independent reasoning and is sensitive to human social situations and has a realization that not all animals have, which is not everybody knows the same stuff. A lot of animals think if I know it, everybody knows it, and no, that's not true. And he's like, please, in talking to Leela and the doctor, he'll say, please don't, give me away. I'm not allowed to speak. You'll have to speak for me and stuff like that.
Right. There is a great, so Leela and the doctor, they show up at the wrong time, the wrong place at the wrong time. That makes them look like the killings must be them. People started dying when they arrived, and it couldn't be the robots or any of us, so it must be you. And
that was such a trope back in Patrick Troughton's day.
Yep. right.
The doctor would show up and is immediately accused of whatever crime has just been committed.
Right. Yeah, they're bringing it back. And so they're brought into this lounge area, and they're being interrogated. And there's this great scene where, like, the doctor has a couple of really nice lines in that bit where he's like reaching for some jelly babies, and he offers it to this guy Borg, and Borg like smacks them out of the doctor's hand. You could have just said no, thank you.
No, thank you would have been sufficient. I also love that scene. As we were approaching that moment, it's like, oh, this is where it's from. The Sycorax Rock has a Fourth Doctor parody called Prydonian Rhapsody to the tune of Bohemian Rhapsody, and there's one moment in that song where the lyric is "Do not throw your hands at me," and and in the video, it has that moment where the doctor is offering a bag of jelly babies, and then the other character just slaps it out of his hand, and that's the video image synced with the lyric, "Do not throw your hands at me, slap." It's a really great moment, and it's like, oh yeah, this is where it comes from.
Well, and then later on, there was a robot that was trying to get to Leela. I think it was V6, and she's able to trap the robot's hand in the door. So then the robot detaches his hand. Mm-hmm. Well, then when the robot gets in, it picks up the hand and throws at her. And she says, "Do not throw hands at me."
Yeah.
Right, and of course,
right.
To throw hands is to fight,
Yeah, throw hands. That's funny. The Doctor also gets a nice insult off on Borg. He says, "You're a classic example of the inverse ratio between the size of the mouth and the size of the brain." I'm like, "Oh, burn!" It's a really good burn on Borg on that one.
Oh, by the way, I meant to mention. I mentioned that some of the humans have hats that are really weird looking hats. Here's how I described them in my notes. Zilda has a silverfish fin hat.
Mm-hmm.
Uvanov has a tall silver backwards flower petal space hat, and Toos has a golden mohawk spiderweb space hat.
Those are accurate descriptions of the. That's a good way of describing them.
I wonder if there were some. They don't really say anything, but I wonder if they were meant to show like authority, positions of authority,
right? Something.
Or status,
because Uvanov has. I mean, all three of them are high-ranking, I gather, and Uvanov has the tallest hat, so I assume that signifies he's in charge.
Yep.
Yes, we should re-implement that in our society. Like the bigger the hat, the more important you are. Like,
well, we've got it in church.
Yeah, that's right, we do. But the president should wear a stovepipe hat like Abe Lincoln. That should be that would be amusing to see. So one of the things that gets Uvanov. Suspicion from Zilda is this secret that he's carrying around, which is that he was responsible for, or they believe he's responsible for, killing a man by exposure on the surface 10 years ago, that man being Zilda's brother.
Right.
And
when she finds out, she's all revenge, you're a murderer now, right before a robot kills her.
Mm-hmm. Right. And she's dead right there with the evidence and in Uvanov's quarters, so therefore, red-handed, they think it must be Uvanov. And Poole and Carroll were both witnesses, which is interesting that Poole would have been a witness because he's an undercover cop. So was he undercover there? That's interesting.
Well, didn't he say something about that he was away from the miners for a while?
Oh,
so he was probably on his crew, and then left to be the undercover cop, and then came back.
I see. Yeah, that could be it.
Well, and then eventually, we find out later on that really Uvanov tried to prevent Zilda's brother from going out, but he went robot crazy.
Yes.
And so
left the ship.
Actually, Zilda is wrong. She misinterprets the connection between her brother and Uvanov. Uvanov actually tried to save her brother.
Yep.
And Uvanov feels guilty. Like, that not that he killed him, but that he didn't prevent it, that he didn't see it and save him in time.
Yeah.
Which, is admirable. It's virtuous on his part then.
Unfortunately, early on, everyone is just bickering and none of this relevant information. The characters, therefore, never learn any of this relevant information from each other because they're bickering so hard. Yep. And it's like, oh, come on, guys. Let's not bicker about who murdered whom.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be an happy occasion.
Yeah.
So,
one thing they do good though with Uvanov's character is, at the beginning he's all about, I'm going to get the ore, I'm going to get the money, I'm going to be rich. It's me, selfish, materialist, capitalist. But he does change throughout the story.
He's got a real character arc.
As he realizes the danger they're in, and as he realizes, the problems that are going on, he does change very quickly. He's not worried about the money anymore. He's worried about saving people's lives, and not just his own.
Right. He is a multifaceted character, which is good. One thing I like about Leela is that she looks like a savage. She looks like unsophisticated barbarian, but she instinctively understands what's going on better than these supposedly sophisticated humans here, and I like that Leela gets to shine in this one like that. So that was really a good aspect of it.
Yeah.
I note also that Dask is one of those villains who doesn't like to gloat. He's actually, the Doctor actually gives him a chance when he's about to kill the Doctor. He's like, "Wouldn't you like to tell me your whole secret plan?" No.
Yeah.
No
monologuing. No monologuing.
One thing that's nice about this, other than there are a couple things that from a Doctor Who lore perspective are interesting. One is that we get an explanation, primitive as it is, of why the TARDIS is bigger on the inside than the outside. And basically the Doctor says the insides and the outsides are not in the same dimension. And for what you could communicate to a 1970s TV audience, that's pretty good, you know.
Yep.
But then the other is, in terms of lore building, is the Doctor says his age in this. He says he's 750 years old, which would mean 300 years have passed since Tomb of the Cybermen, when Patrick Troughton said he was 450. So both of those are interesting from a sort of lore building perspective, in an otherwise somewhat forgettable episode. You know, I mean, it's not bad. It's just somewhat forgettable.
Right.
It would have been more interesting if they, like, we never get to see Poole, who's named after science fiction writer Frederick Poole.
Right. Just
like the roboticist.
It's not Poole Anderson?
Yeah, Poole. Poole Anderson. The roboticist Taryn Capell, his name is meant to be reminiscent of Carol Capek, who was the author that wrote R.U.R., the play that introduced the word robot.
Oh, right.
Because it's like in an Eastern European language that Capek spoke, it means drudge. So a robot is a drudge. It's something that you create to make labor. It's an artificial man to do labor, basically be a slave. And RUR stands for Rossum's Universal Robots, which is the company that makes robots in the play.
Right. Yeah, I do remember that. That's why that was familiar. I'm like, why is that name so familiar? But that was good.
And they actually have a robot rebellion in Rossum's Universal Robots, like they're trying to start in this one. Only that one is successful.
Well, and that's one of the things that
hey baby, why don't we get together and kill all humans?
Yeah.
One of the sad bits of this is the solution was to blow up basically the robot brains to make their heads explode, and it is D84, the good robot, who sacrifices himself to take out the other robots, and that's the sad ending of D84.
Although he's very calm about it. It's like, I forget what he says, but it's like, see you later.
My friend.
And it blows up all their heads.
Or something like that,
Yeah.
But what I was saying is we never get to see Poole working with D84. I mean, you can just imagine the trailer. I mean, one of them's human, one of them's a robot, and together they've got to go undercover to stop crime. And it's like, okay, robot human buddy movie, undercover cop buddy movie. That sounds fun.
Well, RTD, are you listening? Russell T Davies, are you listening? We need this for the Hooniverse. Oh.
The 70s had a lot of those like buddy cop shows, like Starsky and Hutch sort of thing. So that would have totally worked.
That's what I was just thinking: flying around in a spaceship with the red and white stripe, the Starsky and Hutch red and white stripe.
Love that car. That was awesome. The only thing I wanted to mention was just like the use of the helium to change the voices, and
why do you mention that?
and the Doctor's voice doesn't change, and at least they give us an explanation. Like the Doctor, she asks him, "Why didn't your voice change, Doctor?" And he explains because he's Gallifreyan and he's got two hearts and whatever, some cockamamie story, but
not affected by helium because of his respiratory system. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Maybe Tom Baker just didn't want to suck helium and have his voice changed.
Well, it also can be. I mean, there could also be a plot reason for that, because if his voice, he's talking before Capel starts trying to give his countermand orders, don't kill me. And if Tom Baker's voice had changed before he gave that order, he could have realized his own voice was going to be affected too.
Yep.
And so it could have tipped him off, and he might have been able to find some other way of saving his life.
Right.
So one thing I forgot that even better than the clockwork robots of Girl in the Fireplace. This is actually these robots are much more like the ones in the Voyage of the Damned in the spaceship Titanic.
Visually.
The angel-like ones, yeah. Even to the point of their very pleasant voices, and including when they say "kill, kill, kill," which is very similar. So that I have to say, visually they look the same. Yeah. Father Cory, any other notes on this one?
I love Leela when she first has to fight one of the robots. She's got her knife out and she's fighting, and she throws the knife sticks it, and the robot just knocks it away. Oh, now you're just showing off.
That was good. Jimmy, any other further notes?
Well, I like that even though they don't name it, I like that they've got Asimov's first law in here, because we do need, if we're going to have robots, we need safety features like that. I didn't like all the bickering, but I did like how everyone became reasonable, at a certain point. I didn't like a couple of bits of outdated science that we have in this story. One of them is the doctors. Someone saying it's impossible for robots to kill, and the doctor says, "Well, like, what about bumblebees? It's impossible for them to fly." According to the laws of aerodynamics, like, no, it's not. It is not impossible for bumblebees to fly.
Although, this does actually bring up the Fourth Doctor loving bees and being possible, that whole headcanon about the Doctor being the beekeeper in the sixth or seventh Doctor's time. I forget what it was. Seventh Doctor's time. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yep.
And someone, because this is a far future, not all the humans know what bumblebees are. One of them says, "What?" And the Doctor says, "Terran insects." And he pronounces, instead of saying Terran, he does say Tehran insects, like the capital of Iraq, or the capital of Iran. Yeah. Also, there's a bit later on where one of the characters is giving Leela a glass of water, and she tastes it and says it tastes, it has no taste. And the guy on the sand miner says, water, on a sand miner never has a taste. And it's like, okay, we got multiple problems here. First thing, if you've ever drunk distilled water, which is what he indicates this is, distilled water tastes terrible. Yeah, we need those minerals in it to make it taste not terrible. So if it's just pure H2O, oh man, the taste is awful. If you don't believe me, go down to the store, buy a bottle of distilled water, take a slug. You will see what I mean.
Yeah.
But actually, water does have a taste. That's why distilled water tastes awful. It's such a mild, ubiquitous taste. We're so used to it, we think of it as if it's no taste, but really water does have a taste.
Right. All right, so I think that does it for this discussion, and we'd now like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including George C., John Y., Norman S., Jessica K., and Manny T. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And we'd also like to thank Simon Yannick who edited this episode for us. So that's it from us this time. What did you think of The Robots of Death? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com, or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. You can watch The Secrets of Doctor Who on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the first Doctor story, The Mythmakers. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you, Don.
And Jimmy Akin and friend, thank you as well.
For me and my companion K9, thank you.
And folks who aren't watching the video, Jimmy's got a beautiful dog in his lap. And once again, I'm Don Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, if people see you mean them no harm, they never hurt you. 9 times out of 10.